Welcome to Commander Central, episode 208, and today we'll be taking a look at Core Set 2021. I'm Dana.
And I'm Max.
Max, how you doing today?
Doing great on this Friday. Looking forward to the weekend.
I think you are all done with work now for the weekend too, right?
I am. I'm done for the day. I can't wait.
I think I am too. My plan after I get off the phone here, there's a couple places in town that are open for haircuts. I saw you got one, I believe, done last weekend.
Yes.
So that's my big plan. I'm excited to maybe go get my haircut. We'll see.
There we go. You feel like a new person afterwards.
Man, mine's getting to be out of control a little bit. So yeah, I feel like I just need to go get that done. That's what life has devolved down to, is I'm excited about the possibility of a haircut. Did you get a chance to play any games? I know our shop's semi-open this week for games, but we didn't go down just because we're still both a little bit like, yeah.
Right. No, I have not gotten to play some games lately. I should be playing some this weekend, though, so that'll be a good time.
Well, we'll have to check back next week and see how things went. I played a few on stream with EDH Recast this week. We had Jumbo Commander on.
Awesome.
DJ's always fun to play with. I saw you stopped in for a few minutes.
Did stop in for a few minutes, yep.
My most notable thing for me, at least, was the last game of the night, and it was late. We played relatively late. I was playing my Mina and Den deck, and DJ had his Rowan and Will Super Friends deck. So is it Super Friends?
Okay.
And we all teamed up to kill Joey first, because he was playing a Sir Conrad deck.
Okay, never mind. That makes 100% sense. I was about to defend Joey, but never mind.
You just can't let him play Magic. That deck is it'll just kill you. Like, he'll just do something on a turn and everyone takes 14 damage, and then the next turn you take 6. I mean, it's silly. So we took him out, but the problem with that was then DJ, like, in the process of throwing all our resources at DJ or at Joey, DJ had gotten like 5 or 6 planeswalkers out, and they were all like rolling up. Matt was able to get through on him for, like 14 damage and pass it to me. And all I had out was Oracle of Moldiah, which I believe is a 2/2. But DJ had no blockers left, so I swung at him with the Oracle and did the Blood Rush. That 6-drop creature that blood rushes for the number of lands you control. So I was able to nug DJ for 18 damage with whatever that blood rush creature is.
Oh, wow. Rubble Hulk,
there we go. Then swing back at Matt because I was able to take an extra combat step. But Matt was able to destroy my creature in response because I thought I could get through. I was 1 mana short from being able to put Swiftfoot Boots on before I swung at DJ, which would have probably saved me from the swing back at Matt. But I didn't have enough mana for the Swifties, so Matt stopped that. But I eventually got through. I think 2 turns later on him, I was able to poke through and take out Matt. But that was a good game. All 3 games were pretty good, but that was the one that I won. DJ won the other 2. He was beating us up this week.
He came to play.
He did. He came loaded for bear. So it was fun.
Did he get some weird memo saying he was playing for a spot on the show or something?
Yeah, maybe. Gonna replace me probably. So that was a good time. And yeah, I'm gonna try to play some games this weekend too, so hopefully we'll have a few more next weekend. So at least there's some semblance of normal life creeping back in.
Yes.
Chris is still on track, probably week after next, I would guess.
Early July, yeah, probably.
Yeah, that is fast coming up. We made some more progress on kind of a Patreon thing we teased last week that's involving some arts in, and we are really happy with how that turned out. We have to do a little more development on another part of that's I think we're happy with too, so maybe in the next week or 2 we can fully reveal what that is, but super cool and we're really excited for that.
Let's set a goal, you and I, on air, and all of our listeners will hear it. Let's try to have a lot of these wrapped up for Chris's first show back.
Sure, that's a good idea.
Then we can announce it all together.
And we just literally 5 minutes before we aired, we're like, hey, we should use that art on a playmat too.
Yeah.
We'll maybe put some plans together for that here as well. Even, since that whole plan is 7 minutes old. We don't have a lot of specifics there, but.
Speaking of Patreon, we don't have any new people this week, but we would just like to say thank you to everybody who continues to support us through Patreon, and just everybody who listens and gives us that upvote on YouTube, our review on iTunes, our Apple Podcasts. It really helps the show out a lot.
It does. We seriously appreciate it. You guys are what keeps the lights on and keeps everything basically functioning around here. So thank you very much, everyone out there, no matter what you do. It is a big deal. In addition to Patreon, where can people find us out there, Max?
Easiest places to find us would be Twitter at CMDR Central or on Facebook searching CMDR Central. And if you want to talk to any of us individually, we give all that information out later in the show.
Absolutely. So what do you say we jump right into the main show topic here?
Core set 2021?
Core 2021. So overall, before we even go into this, what are your thoughts on the core set?
Here are my thoughts on the core set, and I feel it got extremely overshadowed by Jumpstart, which those previews are continuing / wrapping up as we're recording this show. I was super excited for the core set, and then all of a sudden, Jumpstart previews started. It's like, I already forgot about core set, to be quite honest.
Yeah, I mean, it's been kind of hard to separate the two as well. I'll say this, I mean, at least in my Magic playing career, I can't, speak for like when M10 came out or something. I don't remember what the reprints were there, how exciting they were, but we had a great core set last year with good reprints. We had a good one in 2019 as well. This is the best one I've ever seen, I think.
Yeah, this is, they're really pushing the bar on what they want to try putting into Standard and other competitive Magic formats. Oh, yeah, reprints in this were awesome. I think they are probably the best reprint set for a core set that I've seen since I've started playing Magic, so...
Yeah, just insane. One word I will kind of note here too, particularly with core set reprints, we're not a finance podcast at all, but we do kind of keep an eye on that just because it makes our lives easier if you can buy cards a little bit cheaper than they would cost down the road. Core sets tend to be a good place to pick up those reprints, even if you maybe don't think you are going to play them right away. I was just looking at Core 2019 today, and that's 2 years old now. Omniscience was down to like $4, and it's $15 now. Crucible Worlds got down to like 11 or 12, and it's $21 now. Those are the kind of cards that you might not have a deck for them right now, but like Omniscience can go in any blue deck and not be a bad card. Crucible Worlds can go in any, 3-color deck at least, maybe depending on 2-color deck, what you're running for lands, but like Crucible is a pretty easy card to run in a ton of decks too. And even if you didn't have a slot for Crucible of Worlds, that's the kind of card like it would have been nice to pick up when it was down to 12 when you're at your LGS on a, whatever night you play and you want to buy something to support the shop. Those core reprints are good cards to like just spend a few bucks on and throw in your storage binder thinking that I'm going to play that at some point in time. And then now when you need a Crucible Worlds, you can just grab out of that binder at the $12 versus buying one for $21. Or if you need that Omniscience for a deck, you can, slot it in after having paid $4 for it versus, $15. I'm not saying you should buy every one of these cards, but like Ugin's a great card that's going to go in every single deck. Ugin the Spirit Dragon that just got reprinted in this set. And if Ugin drops to, I don't know what it's going to drop to, but like there's so many good cards here. Ugin could conceivably drop down to $10. Maybe you pick up one of those Ugins and put it in a binder at $10. And then when it doesn't get reprinted, which it very likely might not see a reprint for 3 years, and you're like, oh, I want an Ugin for a deck, and it's now a $25 card. Or you can swap it to somebody for another $25 card you do want for a deck. Something like, just keep an eye on the stuff from core sets that are really good, particularly the mythic reprints. They just tend to recover pretty nicely. All right, Max. High level here, things we won't go into many specifics about. We'll mention, we got a bunch of dogs, which we hadn't really had before. We had hounds, but the hounds are now dogs, and we got... Usually, like in the past, for the most part, dogs in Magic were, it's a random common dog that's a 2/2 with, first strike for 2 mana. It was like what they put in that common slot in white, particularly, to be a body that if you needed to fill out your white weenie deck in a draft, that's what you would grab. There's actually decent dogs now they're printed in white, in part because they printed that new commander, and we might as well just quick read Ren and Ciri.
Ren and Ciri Inseparable is the legendary creature Dog Cat for 1 generic mana and Naya, so red, green, and white. It's a 4/4. Whenever you cast a dog spell, create a 1/1 green cat creature token. Whenever you cast a cat spell, create a 1/1 white dog creature token. And it has an activated ability for Naya and tap. Ren and Ciri Inseparable deals damage to any target equal to the number of dogs you control, then you gain life equal to the number of cats you control.
So that's number one, probably a playable commander. That's not a bad card at all.
No, not at all.
Yeah, there's a lot of decent cats out there. We've just got a few new dogs now. There's multiple things that make cat tokens that's going to make a difference when you use that tap ability. It's a cool looking card. It's the kind of thing someone's going to want to build I've always wanted a dog cat deck. People will build that. They'll build it for their kids. They'll build it for their significant other that isn't that into Magic, but they want to get them in and the person likes dogs or cats. It's a deck that will get played, and, we got dogs and cats for it that are useful. We won't go through all of them because they're really probably only going to get played in this deck, but that's kind of an overarching theme we saw here. We also got 6 new Hondens, if you want to build a Honden deck, which are an enchantment that has that subtype. There was 5 previously from Kamigawa that have gotten printed a few times. None of them are probably individually playable. Like, I'm not going to put this one Honden in one deck, but someone's going to build a Honden deck. Joey was already talking about building one on the DH Recast. Like, there are people that will really get into that theme and build a 5-color Honden deck and run all 11 Hondens. So that's worth just briefly mentioning too. That's a really cool design space, I think, where like they went back to something from Kamigawa and made a few more of them. So now it's kind of a weird EDH archetype on the fringes of the format. That's super cool. We won't go over them, but it's a thing worth noting. And the last thing I'll mention, there's quite a few cards that, again, aren't probably great outside of like a tribal deck, for example, but we got a bunch of rogues that are decent. We got Ghostly Pilferer and the Library Arsonist and some decent spirits in Shacklegeist and also Ghostly Pilferer. It's both a spirit and a rogue. So again, those are decks that sometimes are looking for new cards, and they got ones that are maybe kind of decent for those tribal decks that probably aren't going to go anywhere else. But so there's a few interesting sub-themes that show up here that are going to be exciting for people that want to play those kind of decks. So let's get a little more specific here, and we're going to go through colors, but first we'll just talk about the Planeswalkers, because this one's kind of easy. We were looking through our notes and making notes at the same time, and both of us basically wrote the same thing. And what was that, Max?
Teferi and a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah. Although, it's not fair to, I guess Ugin's a reprint, but yeah, the Planeswalkers aren't the most impressive things ever.
No.
I think that's maybe a polite way to phrase it. I don't think they're bad, actually. I think all of them have a role. Like, Basri Ket's the new one. 3 mana is always nice and aggressive on a Planeswalker. His -2, whenever 1 or more non-token creatures attack this turn, create that many 1/1 white soldier creature tokens that are tapped and attacking. Like, if you're playing a Winota deck, that might go in your Winota deck, or any kind of a soldier tribal deck, which tend to be either mono white or Boros, that's going to make you some bodies for a soldier tribal deck. I'll put it in my Zero deck because it's just so desperate for anything that's playable. But like, it's not a card that people are like excited to jam into just any deck. It's relatively narrow.
It is sort of narrow. I mean, I think I'm going to try it out in Regna and Krav just because it does +1/+1 counter stuff. It makes bodies, and the emblem is pretty powerful too.
Yeah, you get an emblem with, at the beginning of combat on your turn, create a 1/1 white soldier creature token, then put a +1 counter on each creature you control. In most of the rest of them are kind of the same way. Chandra, Heart of Fire, discard your hand, then exile the top 3 cards of your library until end of turn. You might play cards exiled this way. +1 does that. If you're playing mono red and you're kind of hurting for draw, or even maybe Boros, and you're already oftentimes down to 1 or 2 cards in hand, that's not terrible there. It enables Madness strategies. It enables Hellbent strategies. So like there's, in addition to Chandra tribal decks, which are now a thing. So, I mean, that's playable. The new Garruk Unleashed doesn't do anything amazing, but it does 3 useful things. Liliana the Waker of the Dead, she makes people discard cards, and there's always someone looking to build some kind of a discard deck. So they all have a role. And actually, I kind of like that, maybe more than those Planeswalkers that you see and you're like, that can go anywhere and be good.
Yeah.
I kind of prefer ones that are a little bit more narrow. But why don't we talk about Teferi here briefly, Max? You want to read Teferi to us?
Teferi, Master of Time, is 2 and 2 blue for a 3 loyalty Planeswalker Teferi. He has a static ability, and he is the only Planeswalker from Core 21 that has a static ability. You may activate loyalty abilities of Teferi, Master of Time on any player's turn anytime you could cast an instant, because that's not broken at all in EDH. He has 3 activated abilities. The +1 is draw a card, then discard a card. -3, target creature you don't control phases out. Phasing in standard, we'll get to that. And then -10, take 2 extra turns after this one.
Woof. So time stretch on a Planeswalker.
Woof indeed.
You have any decks you're going to put this into?
No. I'm a scumbag. I'm not that big of a scumbag.
So let's discuss that that passive ability there on him. So he'll drop down with 3 loyalty, and you will presumably activate his +1 fairly often, taking him to 4, pass a turn. He's going to go to 5. That person passes, takes him to 6. That person passes, takes him to 7. So he's going to come back to you at 7 loyalty already.
And that's only using him for the +1. There's so many defensive things you could use this card for, and or political even. Say like, hey, if you don't attack me, I'll draw a card this turn instead of phasing out, your creature that you're going to swing with. Or I'll phase out that thing that's in your way so you can get through and hit someone else.
Right, and he didn't... he didn't just magically get up to 7 loyalty, 1 trip around the board. He let you dig down 1, 2, 3, 4 times to find, a presumably good card you wanted there. That's pretty good for 4 mana to dig down 4 deep for 1 spin around the board. And if you happen to get a second spin around the board, you're going to dig down 4 more. And when it comes back to you, have the ability to take 2 extra turns.
Yeah, I mean, he would be at 10 loyalty when your turn hits. So your turn would be 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, 10 would be on your turn. Oof.
Yeah, that's crazy. Now, here's the thing. I don't think he's quite as controlling as some of the other Teferis where, they make it difficult to respond or interact with him.
Ooh, I disagree.
Yeah, you think so?
I think he's controlling in the sense that he's maybe not like Teferi Time Raveler, the 3 mana one from War of the Spark, but you're going to build your deck to protect this guy no matter what. Being able to phase out an attacker, or even I'm at 4 loyalty and you're going to swing at me with a 4/4. Well, I'm just going to +1 him to put him at 5 loyalty and he's still alive.
Right, yeah.
Being able to activate him on everybody's turn just is insane.
And there are 119 different art variations on this that, his eyebrow is slightly arched in one. And basically there's some time art around him and that slightly twists or slightly changes in a way that I don't think anyone will notice. But that is an option as well if you want to run a bunch of different versions of this Teferi.
Here's what I kind of find funny. His static was the Commander 14 Teferi's emblem, essentially. But that affects all your planeswalkers.
Yeah. And that's it's interesting. I'll be curious to see how it winds up playing in Commander. So let's move on here, though. Enough of what a scumbag Teferi is. Before we move on, I will note this. It's a powerful card. I do think this was a bit of a missed opportunity. One of the things I've really liked in the last couple of years, I liked when we got that flip Bolas in 2019, where we got, pre-Planeswalker Bolas and then got to see him turn into a Planeswalker when he flips. I like that design mechanic a lot that we got in Origins. That was super cool. But I also liked a lot last year when we had Chandra and we got 3 different Chandras, uncommon, rare, and mythic, and got to see kind of basically different stages of her life as well. I would have liked to have maybe seen that with Teferi. One of those 2 things, either see pre-Spark Teferi and then a flip version of him, or 3 different versions of him. I think the alt art not only is annoying, but I think it's not that interesting to the game. I would have much preferred to have gotten one of those 2 previous things we got in other years.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so enough about Mr. Teferi. Let's go through the white cards. What's the first one here that jumps out at you want to talk about, Max?
The very first one on the list for me is Angelic Ascension. It's an instant for 1 and a white. Exile target creature or planeswalker, and its controller creates a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying. I really like this.
Creature or planeswalker.
Exactly, creature or planeswalker. So maybe if your buddy has, that one really powerful planeswalker in their deck, you can hold it up for that. Or the fact that there's 6 planeswalkers to 10 planeswalkers a set these days, and now you have an instant speed, cheap removal spell to use, I think is just great for the game in general.
I'm a little torn on this one. It's competing with Path and Swords and Generous Gift in white, and then once you start talking about okay, now we're in, if you're playing Selesnya, now it's got Beast Within for competition, and you're in red, you've got Chaos Warp, and if you're in blue, you're looking at, the Pangify, Rapid Hybridization, Reality Shift, although those don't hit planeswalkers. Once you get into black, you've got a whole bunch of stuff like Utter End and Anguish Unmaking and Vindicate and Putrefy and Despark and whatever. So I think it's a cool card. I think that it's right on the edge of having too much competition. And a 4/4 angel with flying is a big deal too. I think if this created a 4/4, cat or something, if they created a creature that didn't have flying, I would absolutely love it. But giving them a flyer is also a stiff penalty. But I also like it. I do like the card. I just have reservations as well.
Yeah, I originally had those same reservations when this card was first previewed, what seems like a year ago, but it was probably 4 days ago. And I think just when it comes down to it, I think I'd rather have to deal with a single 4/4 angel token versus an Elspeth pumping out 3 bodies. 3+ bodies a turn, whether there's an Anointed Procession or a Doubling Season Out. I'd rather deal with a 4/4 angel than an Ugin lightning bolting me every turn. I just think the upside of giving them a flyer is way better than dealing with a planeswalker that may never get taken care of.
And it's also possible it's one of those things where it seems like it's a kind of a big deal to give them an angel. But in practice, it's a situation where I don't know if people necessarily hold grudges that badly if you blow up their planeswalker with this, that they're going to swing at you if it's a bad move. There's just as good of a chance they're going to get that angel and it'll come back to them and they're like, I'd like to hit Max because he destroyed my Ugin and gave me this stupid angel, but Chris just played this other planeswalker and I would much rather, I just need to remove that with my 4/4 flying angel. So I'm going to swing into his planeswalker. Like, it might be one of those things where it just winds up, while it's definitely a 4/4 flyer and that's not nothing, it winds up just not hurting you that much. So it's a super interesting card, and I'll be curious to see how it winds up playing.
And the fact, like, I think what really pushes it over the edge for me in comparison to something like Generous Gift or Beast Within when you're in 2 colors, is it exiles.
That's very true.
That means you can't get that Elspeth back, or you can't get, that thing back that you're going to regrowth right away on your turn because I know you have it in your hand.
And you can hit that Indestructible Blightsteel, and you can hit that thing that's indestructible because they have angelic...
Right.
Overseer, well, whatever. I forget what the angel is that gives indestructible, but like, whatever. If there's something that's indestructible, it gets around that, and it prevents that Wormcoil engine from splitting into 2. There's a lot of advantages to that for sure.
Are you trying to think of Avacyn?
No, there's a there's like a I thought of
the
Avacyn,
angel that gives indestructible. That's the first thing that came to my head.
I guess. There's a non-named, non-legendary angel that gives target creature indestructible when it comes into play.
Oh, okay.
Or even, what's the thing you run in Dramoka that you can sacrifice to give stuff indestructible?
The little ghost dude.
Yeah, the little ghost dude.
He's a spirit. I know that much. Selfless spirit got there.
There we go. It gets around the little ghost dude. So no, that's a cool card. I'll be curious to see how it winds up playing out. This one I won't talk about for long. I just want to mention it. Basri's Lieutenant. 3/4 for 4 mana, but it has Vigilance and Protection from Multicolored, both surprisingly useful abilities, so that might be enough to make it worth playing in, one of those decks that shares abilities. When it ETBs, put a +1 counter on target creature you control, so if you put one on this, it basically is a 4 mana 4/5, that's not bad either, particularly with those abilities. And whenever it or another creature you control dies, if it had a +1 counter on it, create a 2/2 white knight creature token. So if you're playing a +1 counters deck, it's basically a way to leave behind 3 or 4 bodies when someone board wipes. Or if you're playing a knight deck, it's a way to get knights back if someone board wipes. Again, it's fair. I don't think this is the kind of thing you're going to jam into a deck that isn't something very specific, but I think it's a pretty decent card if you're playing one of those decks. What's next for you, Max?
I'm just going to kind of go off of your list here because I was not too impressed with the white in this set. So Idol of Endurance is the next one on the list that you put there. So this is an artifact for 2 and a white. When it enters the battlefield, exile all creature cards with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard until Idol of Endurance leaves the battlefield. And it has an activated ability for 1 white and tap. Until end of turn, you may cast a creature spell from among the cards exiled with Idol of Endurance without paying its mana cost.
So it's not draw, but it's functionally it's card advantage, which is in white is sometimes good enough, being able to get things back. I don't have a deck for this. And I did see people kind of fawning over it and going crazy about how great it is. I think they might wind up kind of surprised about how, like, if you're in a deck that doesn't have better options than this, which is what, mono white or maybe Boros, how many super, like, crazy strong 3-drops for creatures do you have? You're definitely gonna have a few, but I don't know if it's that amazing. I think it's good, it's useful, and it will have absolute times when it really shines in some decks, but
yeah,
I think it's fairly narrow. It's more narrow than people seem to act like it is, I think.
Yeah, when I was reading this card, I'm like, 3 CMC or less. Isn't there a companion that does something like that? But, of course, they split the difference. Karuga wants your deck to have 3 CMC or higher, and Luris wants everything 2 or less. So it's in that weird zone for even, like, constructed play in my mind. But,
yeah,
as we're talking here, the more I got thinking, like, 3 CMC or less, even if you're in, like, maybe 2 colors, cards I know that I run that are creatures that are that cheap, Serra Ascendant. There's a 1 mana 6/6, essentially.
The Selfless Spirit, I think, it probably would qualify in that deck.
Selfless Spirit is 2 mana, Birds of Paradise. So I think this is really cool for something like to set up like mid-game and then towards end-game when you need those little bodies back just to have a board presence, you can start casting them from exile.
Yeah, I think it will wind up doing good work in some decks, for sure. I don't happen to think I have one, but it's a neat card, and I like to see them doing these kind of creative things to find ways to give white advantage, because that's always kind of lacked that.
Yeah.
The next one we'll jump to here, I'll be curious to hear your thoughts on it, Max. Light of Promise, 2 and a white enchant creature. Enchanted creature has, whenever you gain life, put that many +1 counters on this creature. Is that Dromoka-able?
It's almost all of my decks-able. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, you have multiple things that are life gainers, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, you're 100% correct. This goes straight into Dromoka. Almost every creature in that deck has lifelink, and if they don't, I have ways to give them lifelink.
Right.
Let alone the commander alone. This will make Dromoka a 2-turn clock if it's sequenced correctly.
And that's for one person, right? You dome somebody with this, and Dromoka gets
5 +1/+1 counters on it.
5 counters. But then the next time you kill the person, but like now, then Dromoka gets 10 counters,
Yep.
and then you're just one-shot. Then you one-shot anybody after that, in addition to the crazy amount of life you're gaining, putting you safely out of range.
Right.
Yeah, that's a neat card. I was wondering about that. But if your commander has lifelink, man, that's super tempting.
Yeah, I mean, I can't wait for Dromoka. I want to put in Regna and Krav just because there's enough life shenanigans in that deck. And It's an enchantment, so it'll probably get a slot into Vasa as well.
Sure, yeah. So what's next here?
Mangara the Diplomat, 3 and a white for a legendary creature human cleric. It's a 2/4. It has lifelink. And whenever an opponent attacks with creatures, if 2 or more of those creatures are attacking you and or planeswalkers you control, draw a card. Whenever an opponent casts their second spell each turn, draw a card.
That's card draw in mono white.
That's a mono white card that has the phrase draw a card on it more than once.
Yeah, right, yes. In both relatively easy conditions to hit, too.
Oh, for sure. And the fact that it's on a turn, so like, what if you're playing against a blue player and it's, player 3's turn and player 2 just goes into opt into, another instant. Oh, there's their second spell. Oh, now player 3 casts 2 spells. You might draw a lot of cards off this.
Yeah, the question about it as a commander, like, I don't know if I want it as my commander because it doesn't really lend itself to any particular strategy, particularly in mono white, because obviously if it's your commander, you're stuck playing mono white. I don't know what you're going to do with this that's going to be like a deck win condition, mono white good stuff. I don't know if that's a thing because it's mono white, but I think clearly people will build it, but I don't think its home isn't as a commander. It's just going to be in a lot of mono white and Boros decks and maybe just control decks in general, just as a great draw engine.
Yeah, I know quite a few people in our Slack have already been talking about putting in some of their Alesha builds because it has 2 power, so Alesha can constantly recur it.
Oh, yeah.
So that'll be cool. I'm interested to see Chris if he slots that into his deck here at home.
Yeah, I would imagine there's a lot of decks. If you're playing one of the Sisei decks that care about legends, or I always forget the name of the Abzan legend commander that we got. Was it last year, I think?
Kethis, the hidden hand.
Kethis. Probably has a home in Kethis decks and just a lot of white and Boros decks just to draw cards in general, even if it doesn't fit something they're doing. So, yeah, it's going to be in a ton of decks, maybe more than any card we're looking at here. It's something decks have wanted in that color. Next, we'll talk about 9 lives briefly. 1 white, and an enchantment with hexproof, not an aura, just an enchantment. If a source would deal damage to you, prevent that damage and put an incarnation counter on 9 lives. And when there are 9 or more incarnation counters on 9 lives, exile it. And when 9 lives leaves the battlefield, you lose the game. So Solemnity is a thing.
Yep.
And I think we're getting to the point, like, we've had this conversation 3 times since Solemnities came out where you're like, oh, that'll be good with Solemnity. And like maybe at this point there's enough of those where it's worth someone's going to build a Solemnity deck just like they've not built a Honden deck.
Probably.
And hey, I'm going to run Zerd the Enchanter and be able to go get, my Solemnity. And I'm also in colors to have access to Decree of Silence and things like 9 lives. And so I think there's enough of these things to take advantage of it. It's not the kind of card I don't think you run. I don't think anyone's like, oh, that will go good in my generic soldier deck. I don't think anyone's doing that. I think it's definitely the kind of card you run in a deck where you're going to do something specifically with it. Maybe you're going to give it away with Zendru or something. Get it up to 8 counters and then give it to somebody.
Yeah, you don't even need to have it at that many counters. You could give it to someone right away and then just disenchant it. Oh, it has hexproof.
Yes, it does have hexproof, yeah.
Oh, that's why that's not as easy anymore. Look at that, everybody. I'm a professional. I can read.
But still, get your counters out and give it away with that. That's, I think, a legit use too. So
this whole time, I'm like, why wouldn't you just give it away then disenchant it? You kill someone. Hexproof. That's why, folks.
Well, there are ways you can turn off hexproof
True.
these days. So
yeah.
that could also happen. I think that's what I had. There was nothing else in white cards I wanted to spend too much time on.
Same here.
All right. Blue. What do we have here that you like at all, Max?
Again, not a lot. So we can start at the top of the list with Baron Tolarian Archmage. So 1 blue for a 2/2 legendary human wizard. When he enters the battlefield, return up to 1 target creature or planeswalker to its owner's hand. And then at the beginning of your end step, if a permanent was put into your hand from the battlefield this turn, draw a card.
So there's definitely ways you can abuse this. But I didn't want to think about them.
Cloudstone Curio next.
Yeah, for sure. And there's a few blue enchantments that let you self-bounce them from way back in the day that, can generate you some card advantage doing them. And there's definitely probably some, like, if I Cloudstone Curio this and then copy the trigger with this, and like, there's definitely some crazy stuff you can do. And I was just like, I don't even want to look it up because it's just going to make my brain hurt and I'm never going to do it. But hey, it's a kind of a unique card too in blue. We don't have anything quite like that cares about you bouncing stuff. So,
I mean, this would actually go great in any like ninjutsu decks.
Oh, sure, because it's just bouncing things anyway. It's just going to be happening, so you're just going to get a free card off it.
Yeah, we did it, everybody. We broke Baron.
We did it. We got there. There's Baron. Baron from Mono Blue Ninjas.
Baron is really a ninja.
Next, we have Discontinuity, 3 blue for a sorcery, so 6 mana.
Instant.
As long as it's your turn.
It's an instant.
Yep, sorry, instant. That's very relevant for what I'm going to read next. I don't know why I said sorcery. As long as it's your turn, the spell costs 2 blue less, so it winds up being 1 and a blue on your turn. End the turn. So it's a time stop variant.
This is how you stopped a fairy.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, there we go.
Oh, those mirror matches in Standard are going to be so bad.
Right. I don't know. Again, I don't know if I have a use for this, but like someone who's already running time stop because they have things they want to preserve and end the turn on, it gives them one more way to do that. Not much else to add there. It's a cool card. Any more in blue that you want to spend time on, Max?
Not really.
I'll mention See the Truth. There's a 1 or 2 more I think here that are interesting. See the Truth is 1 in a blue. Look at the top 3 cards of your library and put one of those into your hand and the rest in the bottom of your library in any order. That's a sorcery. If this spell was cast from anywhere other than your hand, put those cards into your hand instead. So I'm not going to put it in my Talran deck because I don't have many ways to cast things from my graveyard, but something like Kess, where you are casting spells from your graveyard, as a sorcery, this isn't terrible, being able to dig down 3 and find 1, and then you're going to flash it back and just draw 3 cards. So decks that are, particularly if the commander is built around casting spells from your graveyard, this is really good. And if it isn't, I don't think you want it. Yeah,
you need flashback or the Tigum that does rebound.
Yeah.
That would be good in that deck.
Yep. Those particular decks, it's going to be super, super value. And I don't think anybody else wants it, but I wanted to at least touch on it because it's so good there. Let's see. Teferi's Ageless Insight. 2 blue. If you would draw a card except the first one you draw in each of your draw steps, draw 2 cards instead.
So a little bit of an All-Halmerits Archive effect going on here.
I'm going to put it in my Talran deck where I have a ton of cantrips that draw me a card, so I will draw 2 instead. That's a pretty good piece of value there. Just a really solid card. I don't think I'm going to put it anywhere else, but I think there's a lot of decks that want it.
Yeah.
And like if you're playing something like Afara, and your deck is built around, flashing in creatures or making tokens on other people's turns so you can draw a card, well, now you're drawing 2. And it's every time you do it, because you're spacing those around multiple turns as well to maximize what Afara is doing, it's also going to maximize the triggers you get off this. And it's just a really, really, really useful card in a lot of decks. And I expect we'll see that pop up quite a bit. I think that's all I really had for blue here. Why don't we jump down to black? What's the first black card you like here, Max?
I really like Demonic Embrace. So this is 1 black for an aura. Enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets +3/+1 and has flying and is a demon in addition to its other types. But what I like about it the best is you can cast Demonic Embrace from your graveyard by paying 3 life and discarding a card in addition to paying its casting cost.
Do you have, is this just a possible Regnant Krav card too, or do you just like the card?
I just like the card. I like that it has that pseudo flashback on it. I like that.
Yeah.
I know a bunch of people that try to run the enchantment where if you control X amount of demons, you win the game.
Sure.
So this just helps turning that, maybe that token someone gave you off that Angelic Ascension into a demon, and you win the game.
Yeah, that's true. And, giving flying and +3 power isn't nothing either.
No, it's not.
Yeah, actually, this is the kind of card, too, that, like, you when you crack it open in your pre-release something, you're like, oh, I don't really want that. And then you're like, oh, wait a minute, I'm going to play black anyway, and it's going to, on turn 6, when I have that 2/2 garbage creature out, it's going to suddenly become a 5/3 and going to dome somebody untouched because no one has flyers, and you'll win. So, and they can't get rid of it. You'll be able to pay life to bring it back. It's just a solid all-around card, I tend to agree. Next one I wanted to mention here briefly is Hooded Blightfang. 2 and a black, Death Touch Snake. It's a 1/4. Whenever a creature you control with Death Touch attacks, each opponent loses a life and you gain a life. Whenever a creature you control with Death Touch deals damage to a planeswalker, destroy that planeswalker.
So, I have a question.
Yes.
I did not know you interned at WotC and designed a card, Dana. I knew Glissa was looking for a win con, but dang, did you make up a perfect card for that deck.
It pretty much is pretty great, and I'm going to for sure jam it right into that deck, and it's probably never going to ever come out. Yeah, it's not like the kind of card, it's not going to just hit the board and win me the game, but it puts everyone on a clock, and they're going to have to deal with it, because it's going to be, whenever I swing, people are going to lose 4 or 5 life every single time. It's going to gain me life. It is only a 1/4, but you can't have everything.
See, this is what I like about this card, specifically in your Glissa the Traitor Death Touch Tribal deck. That deck tends to not attack. Or you only attack maybe with Glissa because she has First Strike and Death Touch. I feel like this is going to make you play that deck a little more aggressively. Maybe not.
Probably.
Not a lot, not like a Boros deck, but you're going to be... I see you swinging with multiple creatures because, well, you're going to kill whatever gets in front of them. Plus, you're draining your opponents. And this doesn't even have to attack. This can just sit there.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree. I will probably force me to turtle up less. So that's also, I think, a good thing to have me do with that deck. So it's a cool card in general. It's also a fun design, using keywords as like for a blood artist kind of effect. So I just generally like the design. Even if I didn't have a deck for it, we probably would be mentioning it. But yeah, that's a fun kind of thing to do in a core set. Any other ones here in black that are worth pointing out? I have a few more on my list.
I have at least one more.
Okay.
My next one is Malefic Scythe. It's 1 in a black. It's an artifact equipment. It enters the battlefield with a soul counter on it. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each soul counter on the scythe. And whenever equipped creature dies, put a soul counter on the scythe. So I really see this going into a lot of like the aristocrat type decks.
Sure.
Put it on something. Now it's +1/+1. Sack it to an altar or something so you can generate the mana to put this onto something else. Now it's getting +2/+2 and just loop that process.
Sure, that makes sense.
It really reminds me of the, I think there was like a mace in Theros or Eldraine that kind of did the same thing. Whenever you casted a knight, it got a counter on it, and then that many counters equals the power and toughness it was giving the creature.
And it's pretty efficient and cheap to cast, and yeah. The next one I'll mention here is Liliana's Standard Bearer, 2 in a black for a zombie knight with flash, and it's a 3/1, which is also not nothing. When it enters battlefield, draw X cards, where X is a number of creatures that died under your control this turn. So someone board wipes, and you just drop this in and draw 6 cards and gain 6 life, or whatever it is. Or if you're playing a deck like Ragnar and Kra, where you're routinely sacrificing stuff, it's just free life gain and free additional cards for what you're already doing, and it gives you a body to then sacrifice and maybe recur in that deck to draw more cards and gain more life.
For sure.
Going to go in a lot of decks that are bringing things in out of the graveyard and that sacrifice stuff, which is a whole lot of black and Golgari decks. One I am not entirely sure yet if I want to try is Peer into the Abyss. 4 black. Sorcery. Target player draws cards equal to half the number of cards in their library and loses half their life. Round up each time. So you're at 70 cards left in your library. You'll draw 35, and you're at 40 life. You drop to 20. 35 cards for 20 life? That's pretty good. And if you're at 20 life, you lose 10, go to 10, and draw 35 cards. I mean, I don't know. It is 7, so you're using your whole turn up. The problem then becomes, can you live long enough to utilize the cards you just drew? You put yourself in a vulnerable position, and now everyone is clearly swinging at you. Right now, in going over decks I have and decks I want to add things to, I don't have this penciled in anywhere. But I do have a note at the bottom of my sheet that I am keeping track of the replacement cards I want to get that says Peer into the Abyss ×4, meaning I want to pick up 4 of them because I feel like at some point someone's going to use it against me and I'm going to be like, how am I not running that? Or like it's the kind of card I feel like at some point I am going to want to put in decks, even if maybe right now I don't have a plan for it.
Yeah, and see, I like this card. I don't have any plans for it, but I definitely don't think it's going to be that big of an issue, like to be able to like cast it and do more stuff on your turn. I mean, mono black alone, if you're looking at, Urborg and Cabal Coffers, that's going to generate easily 7 mana for you.
Yeah.
And a single Nykthos activation if you're in mono black, that's probably going to be enough to cast this card or get you most of the way there, and you're still going to have all your other mana available. So I don't think it's going to be, unless you're casting this maybe on turn 7, but I definitely see this being more like a turn 9 through 12 type of card.
Yeah, I tend to agree. It's neat. I like it quite a bit.
Yeah.
Let's see. You have one more here, I believe, a legend.
I do.
But before we get to that, I'm going to throw one out here that I really, really like. I'm, of course, always a sucker for efficient draw that's really cheap. Village Rites is just a better Ultra's Reap. It's a single black. Instant speed as an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice a creature, and draw 2 cards. I think Ultra's Reap, even though it was pretty efficient at 2 mana, I think it was the kind of card you ran in a deck where you were playing tokens or you were looking to get death triggers or sacrifice stuff anyway, or have it go to the graveyard so you could recast it like Marin. I think at 1 mana, Village Rites is cheap enough where you can just run it and use it in response to someone board wiping or destroying something. Like infrequently do you entirely tap out hard and get rid of everything. Oftentimes you get 1 or 2 mana left just because you didn't, have something to use them on. You can afford to just kind of tap differently and leave 1 black up. And at some point in the next 2 or 3 turns, one of your creatures will die to something accidentally. And you can just, in response to the death trigger or in response to it dying, like, you chump block or someone board wipes or someone goes to remove your creature, draw 2 cards off it for 1 mana.
Yeah.
I think it's at that point at a single black, it's cheap enough you can just run it as a draw spell with no additional plan because an opportunity will present itself. What's your last one here, Max?
My last one is Vito, Thorn of the Dusk Rose, legendary creature vampire cleric. It's a 1/3 for 2 and a black. And I mean, it has my favorite line of text on it. Whenever you gain life, target opponent loses that much life. And then for 3 black creatures you control gain lifelink until end of turn. That's fine, I guess. I just like, half of Blood Bond on it is totally calling my name.
This will be good as a commander, and this will be good in a whole bunch of decks.
Yes, I cannot wait to put it into Regna and Grov.
Yeah. Again, I don't know if I have a home for it, but I will expect to be seeing this regularly in the coming months for sure. All right, let's jump down to red. Anything particular here you want to talk about?
I want to talk about Brash Taunter. It's a 5 mana, 4 and a red, 1/1 goblin, but he's indestructible. And he says whenever Brash Taunter is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to target opponent. And then for 2 and a red and tap, you can have it fight another target creature.
It's a stuffy doll.
It's a better stuffy doll.
Yeah.
Because Stuffy Doll, you name an opponent.
Right.
So you don't have to worry about figuring out how to reset Stuffy Doll.
Yeah, very true.
I think it's a really cool design, especially for a goblin. And the art's just comical, in my opinion.
Yes, the art's great.
It kind of looks like me after a few beverages. Like, okay, bring it on. I can do this.
I can see that. Well, since you mentioned a goblin, I'll jump over to Conspicuous Snoop, which is fantastic.
Yes.
the idea of a bad goblin spy. This is a goblin rogue for red. It's 2/2. Play with the top card of your library revealed. You may cast goblin spells from the top of your library, and as long as the top card in your library is a goblin card, Conspicuous Snoop has all activated abilities of that card. So there's already a couple different Kiki-Jiki combos I saw in goblin decks with this. But like in any goblin deck, that's just a good value card.
Yeah.
So it's fun to see them. We mentioned spirits and rogues before, but the individual cards maybe weren't good enough to super go into. These two are super cool, and if you're playing goblins, you're probably going to consider putting in your goblin deck too. So very fun to see them put these kind of good cards in decks. What do you have next here, Max?
I'm going to jump pretty far down the list here, and I want to talk about Terror of the Peaks.
It's
a dragon. It's a 5/4 dragon for 3 red. It has flying, and then spells your opponents cast that target Terror of the Peaks cost an additional 3 life to cast. And then whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, Terror of the Peaks deals damage equal to that creature's power to any target. So, I mean, instantly Twitter blew up and was like, just put Grafted Exoskeleton on it.
Right.
And because then it's a cooler Perforos. And that's exactly what I want to do with this card.
Yes. It's pretty good. And it's a 5/4 flyer. Like, it's also going to dome somebody in the face. Just a super good card.
I mean, 5/4 for 5. Like, I would expect this to be like 6 or 7 with all the other abilities on it.
Yeah, I kind of would too. So very cool. I will see too much of it and won't be happy ever. A couple enchantments I want to quick touch on. Double Vision, 3 red. Whenever you cast your first instant or sorcery spell each turn, copy that spell and you may choose new targets for the copy. Things like Riel that are super, super deep on spells. I was looking at Matt Morgan's Riel deck list earlier, and he has enough instants to be able to get the copies really, really regularly on other people's turns. He's going to drop this and be able to copy the spells every time around the board, like on every player's turn around the board. Card's really, really great in those decks. In Fiery Emancipation, 3 red. So it's gratuitous violence for 1 more, and it triples damage. If a source you control would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals triple of that damage to that permanent or player instead.
So, because again, I'm a professional, do effects like that stack? So
yes,
if you have that out with like Gisela, Blade of Gold Knight.
You bet. That stacks.
Oh, gross.
And if you're playing something like with Double Strike, if you're playing a Tarka World Render, you just clobber. You just kill somebody in one shot.
I'm going to go throw up quick.
Yeah. So good. I'm putting it in my my Timuret deck. And I thought about it I'm like, well, do I put this in Crash with my fling effects? And very frequently I just kill somebody anyway. So I'm like, I don't know if I need to, I don't know if it is going to win me games that I wasn't already going to win.
Right.
But it's a very, very crazy card.
Yeah.
I have 2 I will quick touch on here. First is Transmogrify, sorcery, exile target creature. So exiling a creature, just directly exiling a creature in red is pretty useful. That creature's controller reveals cards from the top of their library until they reveal a creature card and put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle the rest of their library, rest of the cards into their library. So it's basically a polymorph effect in red. If you're playing some kind of a deck that has beaters and has tokens, it's a great way to turn one of your tokens into a beater. Or if you're desperate, you can remove an opponent's creature and hope they don't get something better. Red's kind of been getting these polymorph effects the last few years, and this is just basically essentially blue's polymorph.
Mm-hmm.
The last one, though, Unleash Fury. Uncommon, it's a white and red instant, double the power of target creature until end of turn. So, first of all, it's a combat trick. He's, swinging at somebody, and they're like, I guess I'll take the 8. And like, boom, there's 16. Again, stacks really, really nicely with Double Strike, because it's going to double both those hits. Super, super useful. This is one I will be running in Crash.
Oh, for sure.
Because not only is it really good on my own creature, hey, I'm going to double the power of this, 16/16 that's got a bunch of counters on it, and then I'm going to fling it and hit you for 32. Because it's doubling the power of the creature, not the damage, that's double the counters that will go on Crash. And same thing there, someone else has a big creature and someone goes to destroy it. Like, well, it's going to, Crash will get 9 counters from this, but I can deal with that. I can use this someone else's creature that's about to be destroyed and double its power just to get twice as many counters in Crash as well. So it has some added utility there, and I'm going to for sure be trying it out in that deck, as well as I would imagine we'll see it in any deck that's messing around with red combat tricks. And it's cheap to cast, uncommon, instant speed. I like it a lot. How about we pop over to green?
Oh, I like green. Green's a fun color.
Green is always pretty good. The first one I'm going to throw out here is Elder Garagaroth.
Okay.
3 green for a beast with vigilance, reach, and trample. So I guess it's the questing beast of the set with a bunch of keywords. Whenever it attacks or blocks, and this isn't deal combat damage, it's an attack or block trigger, so you're just going to get it as long as you make it into combat. You create a 3/3 green beast creature token, or you gain 3 life, or you draw a card. I would guess you won't gain the life very often. You're either going to make a beast or draw a card. But for a 6/6 for 5 mana, that's really, really efficient.
Yeah, it's just that green mythic that's stupid dumb.
Right. And we tend to get one every set. Years ago, it would always be something that was like 8 or 9 mana for some ridiculous giant stompy.
Yeah.
These are a little more efficient the last few years, things like this in Questing Beast, but that's just an absurd card. So what do you want to talk about here, Max?
My first one I want to talk about is Garruk's Uprising. It's an enchantment for 2 and a green. When it enters the battlefield, if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, you draw a card. Creatures you control have trample, and whenever a creature with power 4 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. So it's similar to Elemental Bond. That one says, whenever a creature you control enters the battlefield with power 3 or greater, draw a card.
Yep.
This one, you need 4 or greater, so it does, make a difference. I've seen some of our people in Slack say, I'm not upgrading because, the count between power 3 and greater and 4 and greater was big difference.
Right.
But just giving everything trample for 3 mana, I think is really good. I mean, Nylea God of the Hunt is 4 mana. You have some Gruul enchantments that cost 3, but for a mono green enchantment that just gives everything trample for 3 mana is pretty good.
And there's a lot of decks where that isn't a difference, the leap from 4 to 3.
Right.
All those Angry Omnath decks, like those are 5/5 elementals. They're getting the same triggers and they're getting trample off it. Titania, Priest of Argoth, there we go. Thank you, Max.
You're welcome.
She makes 5/3 elementals. Same thing. She's getting her triggers.
Yeah.
So there's plenty of those green things that this is just a strict upgrade over what they were running.
And secretly, I really want to see Garrick just fight a bunch of dinosaurs like he's about to do in this artwork.
For sure. And people were playing Primal Rage. It's 1 in a green and gives your creatures trample. That card is in a couple thousand decks in EDH Rec. This is 1 more mana with a lot of upside.
Yeah, big time.
So, a really solid card. Next for me, I'll talk about Invigorating Surge, 2 in a green for an instant. Put a +1 counter on target creature you control, then it doubles the number of counters on that creature. I think it needs to be in a +1 counter stack where you're consistently having a bunch of counters on something. I don't think you want to run it outside of that. But again, my Crash deck is built around +1 counters, and a lot of times I have 6 or 8 on something. Being able to double them for 3 mana at instant speed. If it was a sorcery speed, I wouldn't care about it that much, but being able to do it as a combat trick or something is a really big deal.
Mm-hmm.
What do you got next, Max?
This is going to be the only other reprint I think we talk about in this entire show, and that would be Heroic Intervention.
Yeah.
I mean, we talk about it almost on every episode. It's a good card, and I'm utterly shocked to see it being reprinted so soon after Aether Revolt.
Yeah, it's a kind of card that would have. I was expecting to just fall between the cracks for some reason, but it needed it. It was closing in on $20, I think.
The non-promo version from Aether Revolt is now 10, so yeah, it was close to 15 to 20. But I don't know if I want to go with the full art version for them all now. That's what makes me upset. It gets a showcase card.
Sure. I didn't even notice that. It did, didn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Ugh. All right. All right. Well, I'll deal with that on the road.
Yep.
And there's a lot of good reprints. We're intentionally not talking about them. Azusa Lost But Seeking and Massacre Worm. And there's a gazillion good ones here. But Heroic Intervention is just one of those weird ones that, yes, Massacre Worm can go in any deck, but I don't see very many Massacre Worms. People tend to run it in a specific deck. Heroic Intervention can go in every green deck, and people try to run it in every green deck, at least around the tables we play at.
Yeah.
I see a lot of Heroic Interventions.
I mean, it's kind of, in my mind, when I build a deck, it sits right up there with, I'm playing white, get out your Path to Exiles. I'm playing green, get out your Heroic Interventions.
Yeah. And I'm lucky I happen to have picked up, a handful of them when they were $2 a piece or something.
Because
man,
they were a bulk rare back then.
Yeah, and I remember thinking, why would I not have this in almost all my green decks? I need to pick up a few of these for surplus. Not that I thought it was going to be a $20 card. I just thought I'm going to eventually want them. I might as well buy a bunch of them. So, great card. Good to see it get reprinted. Jalrael Mulvaney Recluse, legendary creature, human druid, 1/2. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, create a 2/2 green cat creature token, and you can spend 4 green until end of turn. Creatures you control have base power and toughness XX, where X is the number of cards in your hand. So I don't know if Jalrael does anything as a commander that anybody wants, but the ability to make cats is maybe relevant in a couple of decks. I'm going to put her in Reki for sure.
I was going to say this has to be better than Hope of Girapur or Ovaya Pashiri in Reki.
And actually what it's going to replace Sir Farron the Hingehammer, who's the green one.
Sense.
But here's the thing. I was looking after that. It's getting pretty tight in that deck. 5 years ago, the amount of mono green legends, or in the case of, I guess, Hope of Girapur, colorless, I had some pretty bad ones in there just to have enough. That's not the case anymore. And I think Sir Farron was the last one that felt super mediocre. Hope of Girapur isn't good as a card, but it's so efficient. Same with Ovaya Pashiri. At 1 mana, it's kind of tough to pull those. So yeah, from here on out, it's going to be tricky making cuts for these good mono green legends. There's a few decent cats in here, but I don't think any of them are amazing enough, because if you're playing Arabo or playing the new Ren and Stimpy, they're probably going to go in your deck, and if you're not, you're not. So none of those I think are worth putting too much thought or time into. I do think Track Down, I think it's less a commander card than it is maybe a standard card, but scry 3, then reveal the top card of your library, and if it's a creature or land card, draw that card. That's deep filtering in green, particularly in standard. And they really seem to want to give these kind of effects like this and Once Upon a Time to green versus blue nowadays, which I still can't quite wrap my head around.
We don't need to draw attention to that, Dana.
Okay,
we don't need to draw attention to that at all.
All right, that's what I have for green. Is there anything else for you, Max?
Let's move on to multicolor.
All right. What do you like in here?
First one I want to talk about would be Indulging Patrician. It's one black for a 1/4 vampire noble. It has flying and lifelink, but it also has, at the beginning of your end step, if you gain 3 or more life this turn, each opponent loses 3 life.
You have to be running out of slots in that Regnan Krav deck for stuff.
I am. It's getting to where I'm starting to push some of the token makers out for more of the life drain shenanigans, which wasn't the original intention of the deck, but I kind of like it, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah. I kind of like Experimental Overload. 2 blue-red. Sorcery, create an XX blue and red weird creature token, where X is the number of instant sorcery cards in your graveyard, and then you may return an instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand, and then exile this. So like in decks like Riel, like the one Matt Morgan has played a few times on the EDH Recast stream, he's putting a ton of instant sorceries in that graveyard. Riel is frequently like a 13/13 or something. So this is going to make a giant weird for 4 mana, and it's going to recur some annoying draw spell that's going to draw him a bunch of cards and put more instant sorceries into his graveyard. It's just, I think, a really good card, and it's going to show up in quite a few decks.
I think it is a good card. I wish it didn't exile itself.
Yes.
For us,
because then it would replace
players.
the card. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Because I don't think it's that the kind of thing anyone's going to be looking to do crazy abusive stuff with, and you can't put it on a staff and reuse it every turn. So yeah, I'm kind of bummed that it does that, but I still think it's a really solid card.
Yeah.
What do you have for me, Max?
My next one is Leafkin Avenger. It's a 2 and Gruul for a Elemental Druid 4/3. You can tap it to add green for each creature you control with power 4 or greater, and you can pay 7 and a red, and it deals damage equal to its power to target player or planeswalker. So I only kind of really like this for the mana dork ability, because most Gruul decks are stompy, so you're going to net off a couple green mana, maybe 2, maybe 4, but I just think it's kind of a cool design space for whatever reason. If you did buff your entire team, or you somehow get this up to, being somewhat of a higher power, 8 mana to hit someone or something for that much damage is pretty cool.
It's really kind of too bad that it isn't a Hydra of some sort, so you could tap it and use all that mana to, put more heads on your Hydras when you cast your Hydras, and then those Hydras tend to oftentimes wind up being pretty big too, and 8 mana is a fair activation cost, but like being able to then dome somebody because you've got a 14/14 Hydra out would feel really good. Not that it probably wouldn't be good anyway in a Hydra deck, but it would be nice to have it as a Hydra just to kind of benefit from some additional synergies. But yeah, that's a cool card. I'm talking about Radha, Heart of Keld, which is a strange Radha card. We kind of have gotten used to Radha making mana, and this one feels like a Mina and Den card.
It does.
Which is the deck where I'm going to run it, but it feels like the design from something from this fall's Zendikar set that they just named Radha. It's 1 red and green for an Elf Warrior. As long as it's your turn, Radha has first strike, which isn't that big of a deal, but it's not bad when you're attacking. She's a 3/3, but the important part here is you may look at the top card of your library anytime, and you may play lands from the top of your library. But it isn't played face up either. You're just able to look at it, which is kind of a nice thing to not have to give away that information. 4 red-green, and that is not an tap ability. This is an ability you can activate. Radha gets +X/+X till end of turn, where X is the number of lands you control. I don't know if I will replace Mina and Den with her, although it's an option. But having a win condition on your commander is always really easy. In a landfall kind of deck, it's very simple to be able to tap that twice, meaning she goes from a 3/3 to a 13/13 to a 20/20 or something. That's pretty solid, I think.
Oh, super solid. I mean, even in your Mina and Den deck, you have so much mana to use in that deck. I could see you just pumping her to be lethal for one person, whether she's your commander or not.
She's going to go in the deck, and it's the kind of thing I'm sure I will probably just I'll just swap them out once in a while just to try it. But she's definitely going to go in the deck. So good card. And it's a little bit different than Mina and Den. Omnath kind of has his own vibe because in the Gruul Omnath, because he cares about elementals a little bit more. So you're doing different things. Mina and Den themselves aren't really a combat threat. So you might build that deck a little bit different. I think it's similar design space to those 2 other cards, but it's different enough because it can kind of do Voltron things that I like it. I like seeing them give you a commander that can go in a Mina and Den deck and also be atop a deck with Mina and Den and Omnath in it. There's a lot of interchangeability there, and I like the card.
Yeah.
I think that's all I have for colorless stuff. There's, hey, watch for the spheres will be really good in anyone's bird tribal deck. but not worth spending too much time on. Any
No.
final ones from you?
Nope, I'm good on multicolored as well.
How about artifacts? Anything here?
I think everybody's heard everything that you have to say about chromatic orrery.
And I don't necessarily love it anyway. I think it's a good card, but like I don't think it's that exciting.
I don't either. I mean, it's cool. It's a cool commander card. We get one in every core set. 7 mana is a lot for it, in my opinion, but you get 5 of it back right away.
Sure. Mastermind Tome, 2 mana, and you can tap it to put a page counter on Mastermind Tome and scry 1, or you can spend 2 and tap it to put a page counter on Mastermind Tome and draw a card. So it kind of works like Endless Atlas. Endless Atlas also costs 2 and also costs 2 to activate to draw a card, but you have to have 3 lands with the same name to use Endless Atlas, meaning you're basically restricted to using it in monocolor decks. And aside from red and white, you tend to not do that kind of thing for draw to actually draw. So like it's an Endless Atlas that you can use outside of Boros or white or red. I probably would say hasn't turned into Boros even, but maybe you don't need it in the decks that like.
See, I don't like this card at all. On the sheer fact that once you get that 4th page counter on it, it goes away. You have to exile it too. It's not even like sacrifice. It's exile it and you gain the 4 life. So 8 mana, so it's 2 to cast, and I'm only going to focus on the ability that draws you the card. So you're going to spend 8 mana to draw 10 mana to draw 4 cards, and then it goes away forever. I mean, I get your point comparing it to Endless Atlas. I really do. It's probably the best thing to compare it to, but even in Boros and Mono White and Mono Red, I think there's other draw effects in those colors where they may cost more up front, but you're going to get more out of them in the long run, like Mind's Eye.
There definitely is now. I feel like had this card came out 3 years ago, before Endless Atlas was a card and before Tome of Legends came out in Eldraine last fall, in my mono white deck, or if I was playing mono red or something, I would be like, oh, cool, I'm putting this in the deck for sure. But it didn't come out then, it came out now, and I already have Endless Atlas, and I already have Tome of Legends in my mono white deck, and this isn't quite better than either of those two. So it's probably not going to get a slot there. I think it's just there's some bad timing on, unfortunately, 3 years ago I'd be running it, and today I just don't have room for it. And the decks where you can run it, where you can't run Endless Atlas, that's probably not good enough because those decks have draw in their colors already. So that's a lot to talk about a card that we're not going to play. But I thought it was a kind of an interesting corner case.
It is. It's it's an interesting card. I think we just said it best.
Yeah.
3 years ago, this would have been great.
Yes. The last one, Spark Hunter Masticore, that I liked here, 3 mana. As an additional cost to cast a spell, you have to discard a card. Always hurts a little bit, but it's a 3/4 that has protection from Planeswalker, so like it can't get bounced by Teferi, which I feel like that's the main purpose of this, was in Standard to not get bounced by Teferi. You can spend 1 mana and have it deal damage to target Planeswalker, and you can spend 3 mana to have it gain Indestructible. So basically it's going to just kill Planeswalkers at will.
Mm-hmm.
And it's colorless, so it can go to any deck that, if you are in colors that don't have access to easily remove Planeswalkers, well, now you do. I'm trying to decide if I want to try it in my Vela deck. I don't know if I do or not. 3 mana is pretty easy, though.
3 mana is pretty easy. I mean, it is an artifact creature, and it's going to hit Planeswalkers, so maybe it's worth it.
I think one of the things I've noticed is people, I feel like, have not been playing a ton of Planeswalkers since we've started playing a lot of webcam online right now.
True.
People have made a few deck changes, and Planeswalkers are kind of a pain to deal with. So I feel like I've seen a lot less than I was seeing a year ago. I'm going to pick one up. It's also on my list of cards to pick up because I feel like I'm going to try it out at some point, but not just yet. But I like the design, and I like the fact that we're getting more answers to Planeswalkers between this and the white instant that makes you the Angelic Ascension. So they're getting easier to respond to. I think that's a good thing, because it's frustrating when you can't interact with them hardly at all. Final artifacts before we polish up lands here?
I don't have any.
All right. Lands. Fable Passage needed a reprint. We got a reprint there. Nothing else to say about the card.
I like that it's getting reprinted. I think this is a great thing to put into every core set. I mean...
Sure. Yeah, because that card shouldn't have been $12.
No.
So, yeah, no. Quit giving us... Terramorphic Expanse and give us this, although I guess it does sit in a rare slot, so maybe at some point people won't want to see it a rare, but we're not there yet. So yeah, get more of those out there. Other than that, we got the Temple reprints, which I guess I wasn't expecting the enemy color temples, but we've seen them before. Nothing exciting there.
I was expecting enemy colored. I just wasn't expecting the temples that we just got last year's core set.
Right.
The temples make sense with coming off the triomes from Ikoria.
Yeah, good point. The other dumb land I want to mention here, I shouldn't say dumb because I mean it in a good way. Animal Sanctuary. Tap it for a colorless, or you can spend 2 to put a +1 counter on a target bird, cat, dog, goat, ox, or snake. I mean, again, that's just a silly design space, but I think it's a fun card.
Someone pointed out on, I don't know what Discord or Slack or Twitter feed I was reading, but that's half the Chinese calendar.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. Someone did mention that. Yeah, that's pretty funny. Yeah, I don't know if that was intentional. I'm guessing not, but who knows? And you know what? I might try it in my son's Arabo deck, particularly because Arabo does that thing where it doubles the power of a thing.
Oh, yeah.
So if I'm able to put a +1 counter on something that essentially becomes 2 extra damage, and it's a 2-color deck, I can afford to run a few utility lands. So I might try it there. But it's a fun card, and again, like the Hondens, I like seeing them kind of dabble in weird space like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's it, Max. That's all we have for this core set.
Jumpstart next week.
Here an hour and 15 minutes or so into this. Yeah, we'll do Jumpstart next week. We'd actually talked about before the show, like, do we want to try to do both? And then once we got looking at it, we're like, I don't know if we're going to have time.
No.
So we'll get the rest of the Jumpstart cards and talk about those next week. But I think this is a pretty exciting core set.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. I'm excited to pick up some reprints. Like I said at the beginning of the show, Jumpstart, I think, just overshadowed it for me. So we'll get excited. Yeah. This comes out in paper a few weeks prior to Jumpstart, so...
Very much looking forward to it. All right. I think we'll have a deck tech coming out this Thursday again as well.
That is correct.
Well, until then, you can find me on the Twitter birds at Dana Roach. You can find Max at CMDRCentral_Max. You can find Chris at WiseSquishy1. And you can find our show's editor, Rafael Garcia, at Ursa Bearwalker. Our podcast theme is Retro Future Dirty by Kevin MacLeod, licensed via Creative Commons. And until next time, I am Dana.
And I'm Max.